Greetings, YouTube. The doctor is in. Dr. Urius Papers here, coming at you with another commentary on Dungeons and Dragons. And today we are going to talk about the 2024 version of Cloud of Daggers. This is one of my favorite spells in the game. It is a lower level game, a low level spell at second level, but it is still very effective and can be very effective at higher levels. So we're going to talk about its damage output, its ability to control movement in combat, all of those things. But first, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you have any questions or comments, please leave a question or comment, and don't forget to hit that notification bell. All right, so here's the original Cloud of Daggers, the legacy version, and back in the day, so I think I reviewed this about a year and a half ago, we gave it an A-. I felt this was a pretty good spell. One of the only things I didn't like was that you couldn't move the cloud. Essentially, it was stationary. So second level spell, one action. It's usable by bards, sorcerers, warlocks, wizards. Has a range of 60 feet, which is a great range. Verbal, somatic, material component, which was worthless. You didn't even need to worry about it. It lasted for a minute. It was concentration, which it should be. It is conjuration, not abjuration, so it's conjuration. You fill the air with spinning blades in a cube 5 feet on each side. So it's essentially one square, centered on a point you choose within range. So it could be up in the air. It doesn't say it can't be up in the air. So it could be 60 feet up in the air. A creature takes 4d4 slashing damage. So on average, that is about 10 points of damage. 4d4 slashing damage when it enters the spell area for the first time on a turn, or it starts its turn there. So when you summon this, and this is one of the reasons why I gave it an A-, when you summoned it, Cloud of Daggers appeared, didn't initially do any damage to the creature. It had to enter the space, or it had to start its turn. But at the beginning of its turn, it automatically took 4d4 damage. But it could walk out, and this was stationary at that point. There's no mechanic in here to move this, which means that you as the players have to figure out inventive ways of pushing the enemy back into the cloud. Now, if you do that, it takes damage when it starts its turn there. So a creature takes it when it enters the spell's area for the first time on a turn. That was an important phrase in the original 5th edition, when it enters on the first time on a turn, or it starts its turn there. So you could push it in on your turn, it would take damage, and then when it started its turn, it would take damage again. And you could upcast the spell. Every time you upcast it, it did an additional 2d4 for every slot you used above second, which essentially was another 5 points of damage. So if you cast it as a third level spell, it would do 15 points of damage. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, but it adds up pretty fast if you've got a party who has a lot of movement control. Now, let's take a look at, and we gave this an A- back in the day, so let's take a look at the new version now. So here's the new version. We're going to keep this at an A-. So they added one very, very, very important aspect to this spell, but they took away also another important aspect of the spell. Okay, so it's still a second level spell, still one action casting time, still a range of 60 feet, still verbal, somatic, and material components, still usable by bards, sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards, still has a duration of 1 minute, still concentration, still conjuration. So you conjure spinning daggers in a 5-foot cube centered on a point within range. Each creature in that area, which is typically 1, in that area takes 4d4 slashing damage. Again, on average, that's 10. A creature also takes this damage if it enters the cube or ends its turn there. So it's not beginning anymore, it's ending. So if it enters it, or it ends its turn there, or if the cube moves, that's an important thing, into its space. So that's the thing they added that's really important. You can now move the cube. We're going to talk about that, but they took something away. A creature takes this damage only once per turn. So that's the thing. The biggest difference here is this says when it enters the spell's area for the first time on a turn or starts its turn there. Now it's a creature takes this damage only once per turn. So if I push it in the cube, then it's going to take damage. And if it steps out before the end of its turn, somebody else on a different turn can push it in, and it's going to take damage again. But so it will take damage if I push it into it. So it's going to enter it, or if I move it. So here's the important part. On later turns, you can take a magic action to teleport the cube up to 30 feet. And, of course, you can upcast it. So you can now move that cube 30 feet from where it was. You can teleport the cube up to 30 feet. So I could make it 60 feet away. Could I teleport it 90 feet away? Because that's 30 feet from where it was. Because I can teleport it up to 30 feet. I definitely could teleport it 30 feet closer to me. So the question is, can I teleport it greater than 60 feet away? I don't know. That's something you're going to have to work out with your dungeon master. But the fact that you can move this around. So I got a creature. I put the cube on them. The creature takes damage if it didn't enter the cube. It's not its turn, so it's not ending there. Or if the cube moves into its space, I would say when you first cast this spell, the cube is moving into their space. So they're going to take damage. And then it moves out on its turn. And I could use an action to teleport the cube into their space again, in which case they're going to take damage. Or somebody else could use an action of some kind to push them into the cube, which means if they enter it, then they're going to take damage. And like I said, of course, you can upcast this spell just the same as you could before for an extra 5 points of damage per level above 2. Now, here's some important things that happen with this. And because you can now move this, it's really important that for movement and strategic movement within, and I should say tactical movement within combat. Creatures stuck in it, they don't want to be in there, and they definitely don't want to end their turn there, because if they end their turn, they're going to take damage. So they want to move out. If they move out, we're going to talk about opportunity attacks. So you can make an opportunity attack when a creature that you can see leaves your reach using an action. So if it were to leave your reach, then you could place this in situations where it is possible that you would force a creature to incur attacks of opportunity. That's not always going to happen, but it is possible. One of the other things that you could be doing is pushing. I love forced movement. Forced movement is awesome. If you can get something to enter the cloud, then it will take damage. Free feat that anybody can take at first level, Tavern Brawler. And let's look under the push. It says, when you hit a creature with an unarmed strike as part of an attack action on your turn, you can deal damage to the target and also push it 5 feet away. You can only use this benefit once per turn. And you'll notice it doesn't say anything about the creature size. Nothing in there. You just push it 5 feet. That's it. So you could be pushing things back into the cloud, and that way the caster, that bard, sorcerer, warlock, or wizard that cast it, doesn't necessarily need to use their magic action to move it at that point. Crusher, another great one. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack that deals bludgeoning damage, you can move it 5 feet to an unoccupied space if the target is no more than one size larger than you. So this is usually large creatures or smaller. The fighter has a pushing attack. When you hit a creature with an attack roll using a weapon or an unarmed strike, you can expend one superiority die to attempt to drive it back, add superiority damage. If the target is larger or smaller, it must succeed on a strength saving throw or be pushed. The Way of the Open Hand Monk has push, strength saving throw, or it's pushed 15 feet from you. That also doesn't really say anything about the size of the target. And finally, Vortex Warp is still a spell that is around. And we'll talk about this one later, but you hit the creature, they got to make a con save. They're teleported to an unoccupied space. The Cloud of Daggers does not occupy a space. So it's an unoccupied space of your choice that you can see within range. The chosen space must be on a surface or in a liquid that can support the target without the target having to squeeze. Easy peasy. It's on the ground. So you teleport them right in, and then they're going to take damage because they entered it. So there are multiple ways in getting this spell to work now. But in addition, they added the dynamic that you can move it, which is very important, and you can move it up to 30 feet with an action. So if you don't have a party that can push or pull things, and I didn't talk about any of the pull things like Thorn Whip or any of that, but if you don't have a party that can do some of that stuff, you yourself can now do it with this magic action and teleporting the cube. But just keep in mind, a creature takes this damage only once per turn, not round, turn. All right, that is what I have for everybody today. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I will catch everybody